Clara had always lived a life that others would call stable and comfortable, with a husband who loved her, a small but cozy home, and a routine that rarely changed, but inside her, there was a quiet yearning she barely admitted to herself, a sense that something was missing, something she could not name, and it was on one rainy evening that the world seemed to shift ever so slightly when she found herself wandering into a small art exhibition downtown, mostly to escape the feeling of emptiness that had settled like a shadow over her days, and as she stepped inside, she was greeted by the soft glow of lights reflecting off paintings and photographs, but it was the music that first caught her, a young musician seated at a grand piano in the corner, fingers moving over the keys with such precision and emotion that the notes seemed to wrap around her heart and tug at parts of herself she had long forgotten, and she noticed him almost immediately, Leo, with a kind face and eyes that seemed to see beyond the surface, not just observing her but somehow noticing the quiet longing she carried with her everywhere, a warmth rising in her chest she could not explain, a fluttering that made her pulse quicken, and she stayed at the back of the room at first, pretending to admire a painting but secretly listening to every note he played, the music full of gentle sorrow and hope all at once, and when their eyes met, just for a moment, she felt a strange connection, a bridge between their lives that seemed impossible yet undeniable, and as she walked closer, each step felt heavy with anticipation, curiosity, and an unfamiliar excitement, and when she finally reached him, Leo smiled politely, nodding in greeting, and in that smile, Clara thought she saw something familiar, a reflection of emotions she had kept hidden, and they spoke briefly about the performance, and she found herself laughing at his light-hearted jokes, feeling a freedom she had not experienced in years. The way his voice held a softness, a gentle resonance that made her heart feel both light and heavy at once, and after the exhibition, she lingered, hoping for just a few more words, and Leo invited her to sit and listen as he played a few more pieces, and she stayed, forgetting about the rain outside, the lateness of the hour, and even the life waiting for her at home, and the music wrapped around her in waves of emotion, and in those moments, Clara felt seen in a way that was rare and startling, as if this young man understood the hidden corners of her heart, and as she walked home that night, the rain soaking her coat, she could not stop thinking about him, about the way his laughter lingered in her mind, the way his eyes had looked at her as if they recognized a truth she had hidden even from herself, and she tried to shake off the feeling, telling herself it was only a brief moment, a fleeting connection that meant nothing in the grand scheme of her life, but still, the spark remained, quiet yet persistent, a reminder that even in the steadiness of her life, there were pieces of her that craved discovery, passion, and emotion beyond the ordinary, and she found herself returning to the thought of Leo, imagining what it might be like to talk to him again, to hear him play music just for her, and the thought made her stomach twist with anticipation and unease, because she knew she was crossing an invisible line, even if it was only in her heart, a line drawn by years of commitment and routine. But the longing was undeniable, and it grew stronger each day, lingering in quiet moments, in the way she looked at her reflection and felt the weight of her hidden desires, and she remembered the thrill of feeling alive, of being truly noticed, of having someone see past the surface to the woman she had been before life had taught her to settle and hide, and the more she thought about Leo, the more she realized that her life, though comfortable, had been missing a spark, a feeling of being fully awake, and he, without intending to, had awakened something in her that was deep, fragile, and intoxicating, and though guilt tried to creep in, reminding her of her vows and the life she had built with Daniel, her husband, the pull of this new, unexpected connection was strong, impossible to ignore, and Clara found herself planning small, innocent reasons to see him again, to hear his music, to talk just a little longer than she should, each encounter leaving her simultaneously exhilarated and terrified, because she knew that this emotional closeness, though harmless in intention, carried the weight of temptation, the thrill of forbidden attention, and the beauty of being understood in ways she had almost forgotten, and in the quiet of her home, she replayed every note, every smile, every word, feeling both the sweetness of connection and the sting of her own secret, and she wondered if anyone could truly understand the complexity of longing that could bloom in such small, stolen moments, and she thought about Daniel, her husband, who was kind and loving, and she felt a pang of guilt, but the heart has a way of yearning even when the mind warns, and in those early days, Clara realized she was standing at the edge of something new, something delicate and dangerous in the sense that it threatened to unravel the life she had always known, yet also promising a rediscovery of herself, a spark of passion that she had almost forgotten existed. And she found herself imagining not just the music, but conversations, laughter, shared silences, moments of vulnerability, all of it weaving a thread of emotional intimacy she could not resist, and each time she thought of it, a shiver of excitement ran through her, and she began to notice details she had missed before, the way he listened, the way he remembered small things she had mentioned, the way his presence made the world feel larger and brighter, and yet, even as she reveled in the thrill of connection, there was a shadow of fear, a whisper that she was treading dangerous ground, but Clara could not bring herself to stop, not yet, because she was hungry for the feeling of being alive in a way she had forgotten was possible, and as the days passed, she found herself thinking about him in quiet moments, smiling at memories of his voice, the music that seemed to resonate with her heart, and the possibility of a new connection, a deep emotional bond, however fleeting, and she realized that life could surprise you in ways you never expected, that even in the most ordinary routines, sparks of feeling could ignite, making you question the boundaries of your own heart. And as she lay in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, Clara understood that she had stepped into a world of emotional discovery, one where longing, curiosity, and quiet attraction could coexist with love, commitment, and guilt, and she wondered what the next encounter with Leo might bring, whether it would deepen the connection or simply leave her yearning even more, and the thought kept her awake, heart racing, mind swirling with emotions she had not felt in years. And she finally realized that life was unpredictable, fragile, and beautiful, and that sometimes, the heart finds its voice in the most unexpected places, in a rainy evening, in the soft glow of an art gallery, in the music of a young man who saw her not as a wife or a figure of routine, but as a woman capable of feeling, longing, and rediscovering herself, and Clara knew that whatever came next, she had opened a door inside her that could not be closed, a door that would change her forever. And as the rain tapped gently against the window, she smiled through the mixture of excitement, fear, and anticipation, ready to see where this secret, delicate connection might lead. In the days that followed the rainy evening at the gallery, Clara found herself thinking about Leo more often than she wanted to admit, his music and quiet presence lingering in her mind like a melody that refused to end, and she began to search for small reasons to see him again, even if it meant walking past the little cafe where he sometimes played, pretending to be a casual patron, just so she could hear the notes that stirred something deep inside her, and each time she heard his piano, she felt a thrill she hadn't experienced in years, a mixture of nostalgia, curiosity, and an almost forbidden longing that both excited and frightened her, and the more she lingered in these moments, the more her heart seemed to expand, as if the music had unlocked parts of her she had long ignored, and Leo, for his part, seemed to notice her presence, his eyes meeting hers with a quiet recognition, a subtle warmth that made her pulse quicken, and they began to talk in fleeting exchanges at first, about trivial things, the weather, the cafe, small jokes, but gradually their conversations deepened into discussions of life, dreams, and emotions, and Clara found herself revealing thoughts she had never shared with anyone, not even Daniel, her husband, thoughts about regret, about missed opportunities, about the longing to feel alive beyond the routines of her days, and she felt an unexpected comfort in Leo's attentive listening, the way he nodded at the right moments, the gentle encouragement in his voice that made her feel safe to express herself, and over time, these encounters grew longer, more intimate in their emotional weight, though carefully restrained in their nature, as Clara knew the line she was approaching yet could not bring herself to stop, because for the first time in years, she felt truly seen, understood, and alive, and as she walked home after these meetings, the cool evening air wrapping around her, she replayed every word, every glance, every chord that Leo had played, feeling a mix of exhilaration and guilt, a tension that both terrified and thrilled her, and she noticed subtle changes in herself, her steps lighter, her smile more genuine, her thoughts brighter, as if these brief emotional escapes had infused her with a new energy she hadn't realized she was missing, and one evening, after the cafe had emptied and the last few customers had drifted away, Leo invited her to stay and listen as he played a private piece, just for her, and she agreed, heart fluttering with anticipation, and as his fingers moved over the keys, producing a melody filled with longing, hope, and quiet melancholy, Clara felt her emotions swell in ways she could not control, tears threatening at the edges of her eyes, because the music spoke to her heart in ways words never could, and she realized that this connection, while innocent in its physical distance, was profoundly intimate in its emotional depth, creating a bond that neither of them could deny. And as the last notes faded into silence, Leo turned to her with a smile that was both shy and inviting, and Clara felt a rush of feelings she had not anticipated, a blend of admiration, attraction, and a strange, intoxicating sense of being understood, and in that moment, the world outside seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them and the fragile, beautiful connection they had begun to forge. And Clara knew that what she felt was dangerous in the sense that it threatened the stability of her life, yet irresistible, because it revealed a part of herself she had long ignored, a part that craved attention, emotional closeness, and the thrill of being truly appreciated. And over the following weeks, Clara found herself scheduling small, innocent excuses to meet Leo, to hear him play, to share moments of laughter and quiet conversation, each encounter building an emotional intensity that was thrilling, frightening, and addictive, and she discovered that these meetings became the highlight of her days, a private sanctuary where she could explore feelings she had buried under years of routine, comfort, and responsibility. And she noticed changes in her own behavior, subtle shifts in her demeanor, the sparkle in her eyes when she recounted the day's experiences, the warmth in her voice when she spoke of music, and the gentle hum of excitement that lingered long after she returned home, all of it feeding a growing inner awareness that she was awakening to a life beyond the one she had been living. And yet, the complexity of her emotions weighed heavily on her, because she loved Daniel, and the thought of betraying the trust they had built for decades gnawed at her heart, creating a constant tension between desire and loyalty, between self-discovery and guilt. And Clara wrestled with these emotions every day, sometimes denying them, sometimes surrendering to the intoxicating pull of Leo's presence, and she found herself imagining conversations that had not yet happened, rehearsing words she might say, imagining the soft warmth of his hand on hers in an innocent gesture of comfort, feeling the electricity of emotional closeness without crossing any lines. And the thrill of these imagined moments made her pulse race, even as her mind reminded her of the consequences. And each time she returned home, she felt a mixture of joy and regret, excitement and apprehension, knowing that she was walking a fine line between emotional awakening and potential heartbreak. And Clara began to understand that this connection was not just about attraction, but about rediscovering parts of herself that had been dormant, about reclaiming the ability to feel deeply, passionately, and vulnerably. And she began to see how music, conversation, and attention could awaken her spirit in ways she had almost forgotten were possible. And yet, the secrecy of it all weighed heavily, each smile shared with Leo, each private moment of laughter or understanding, a bittersweet reminder of the life she could not fully leave behind, the vows she had taken, the comfort she had built with Daniel, and the inevitable collision between her hidden world and her committed life loomed in the background, a quiet tension that made every encounter with Leo both thrilling and dangerous. And as she lay in bed at night, replaying the day's events, she realized that she was caught in a delicate balance of longing and loyalty, desire and responsibility, and that each choice she made would ripple through her life in ways she could not yet predict. Yet she could not deny the pull of this emotional intimacy, the way Leo made her feel seen, appreciated, and alive. And she began to notice the subtle shifts in her own confidence, the way her voice carried more warmth, the way her eyes sparkled with curiosity, the way her heart beat with anticipation even at the smallest thought of their next meeting. And she understood that this awakening was about more than just Leo. It was about her own heart, her own capacity to feel, to connect, to rediscover the vibrancy of life. And she wondered if Daniel could ever understand, if he could see beyond the surface to the complex emotions stirring inside her. And for the first time in years, Clara felt truly conflicted, torn between the comfort of familiarity and the intoxicating thrill of new emotional experiences. And yet, she could not stop herself from returning to the cafe, from listening to Leo play, from feeling the warmth of his attention, from engaging in conversations that made her feel alive. And she noticed how her heart seemed to expand with every shared laugh, every gentle glance, every note that resonated with her own unspoken emotions. And she began to treasure these moments with an intensity that both thrilled and frightened her, knowing that this connection was fragile, delicate, and potentially transformative. And she realized that she was learning something profound about herself, that emotional intimacy, even without physical touch, could ignite a deep and powerful sense of vitality, could awaken long-dormant passions, could remind her that life was richer, fuller, and more complex than she had allowed herself to imagine. And she felt a bittersweet ache, a longing that was both exhilarating and painful, as she recognized the beauty of this delicate bond and the risks it carried. And each evening she returned home, she carried this secret with her, feeling both alive and guilty, exhilarated and vulnerable, aware that her life had subtly changed in ways she could not yet fully articulate, and that the path ahead was uncertain, full of possibility, longing, and the quiet thrill of emotional discovery. And Clara knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge her heart, test her loyalty, and reveal the depths of her own capacity to feel, love, and be moved by the unexpected power of connection, music, and shared vulnerability. And she wondered, with a mixture of hope and fear, what would come next, how far these emotions could carry her, and whether the delicate, fragile intimacy she had found with Leo would survive the reality of her life, her marriage, and the choices she would have to make. And as the days passed, Clara felt herself being pulled deeper into this new world of emotional awakening, a world that was thrilling, dangerous, and profoundly moving. And she realized that life had a way of surprising you, of presenting moments that awaken the soul, of challenging the heart to grow beyond fear. And in those quiet hours, listening to memories of music, feeling the echo of conversations, and recalling glances that lingered longer than they should, Clara understood that she had entered a chapter of her life that would change her forever, teaching her about longing, vulnerability, and the power of emotional intimacy. And she could not help but wonder how the next meeting, the next shared smile, the next fleeting moment would shape the story of her heart, her life, and her understanding of love in its many forms. And though uncertainty loomed, she felt a thrill, a pulse of excitement, a quiet courage stirring within her, because she had discovered that even in the midst of routine and comfort, life could surprise you, hearts could awaken, and the journey of rediscovery could begin in the most unexpected, beautiful, and tender ways. It started with small signs that Clara tried to ignore, little moments that carried weight, like the way Daniel's eyes lingered on her longer than usual, the way he asked about her day with a quiet concern she had almost forgotten. And at first, she convinced herself that she was imagining things, that perhaps her own guilty thoughts were projecting shadows where none existed. But as days passed, the evidence grew harder to dismiss, subtle shifts in tone, fleeting questions about where she had been, a look that lingered longer than normal. And one ordinary Thursday, it all came to the surface when Daniel, coming home earlier than usual, noticed the ticket stub from Leo's cafe performance sticking out of Clara's purse, a small piece of paper that seemed insignificant, yet in that moment, it felt monumental. And he held it gently, his eyes searching hers, not with anger at first, but with confusion, hurt, and an underlying fear he tried to mask. And Clara's heart thumped violently in her chest, a mix of dread, guilt, and fear of losing control over a situation she had allowed to grow quietly. And when Daniel asked her about the ticket, she tried to respond lightly, to laugh it off as a casual outing, but the tension in his voice and the steady weight of his gaze made it impossible. And suddenly, all the small lies and omissions she had convinced herself were harmless seemed to pile up between them like a wall, and she felt her chest tighten, realizing that the secret she had nurtured, this emotional intimacy with Leo, was now threatening the foundation of her marriage, a foundation she had always thought solid and unshakable. And over the following days, Daniel observed subtle changes in her, the quiet sighs when she thought he wasn't looking, the distant expressions in her eyes, the way she sometimes lingered over her phone or stared at blank walls as if lost in thought. And each observation tightened a knot in his chest, a mix of concern, suspicion, and quiet heartbreak, because he loved her and had trusted her completely. And now he sensed that a part of her heart had drifted away from him, even if she had not acted on it physically. And Clara, meanwhile, felt herself unraveling inside, caught between the exhilaration of her emotional connection with Leo and the loyalty she felt toward Daniel. And she tried to explain in fragments, careful words that hinted at her inner world without fully revealing the depth of her attachment. But the truth, as always, has a way of surfacing in its own time. And one evening, after a particularly tense day, Daniel asked her directly to speak honestly, to tell him what was happening in her heart, and Clara, unable to contain the weight of her emotions, let the words spill in broken sentences, admitting to late nights, to the emotional closeness with someone else, to the yearning she had tried to suppress, to the delicate, innocent moments that had grown in intensity, and as she spoke, she watched Daniel's face, seeing the quiet pain that replaced the warmth she had always known, the hurt that came not from betrayal alone, but from the realization that the woman he loved had been carrying a secret he could not fully share, and his eyes, full of sorrow, met hers, and she felt a lump form in her throat, a wave of guilt so intense that it made her knees ache, because she understood that her desire to feel alive had come at the cost of the security, trust, and comfort of a shared life built over decades, and Daniel, though quiet, listened with a patience that was both heartening and heartbreaking, nodding slowly, absorbing each confession, feeling the distance between them grow even as he struggled to reach for understanding, and Clara, seeing his pain, realized that this moment could either destroy them or become a turning point, depending on how they chose to respond, and she wanted to explain, to justify, to make him understand that her heart had wandered not out of lack of love, but out of longing for herself, for parts of her spirit she had neglected, for the emotional spark that Leo's presence had ignited, yet words seemed fragile in the storm of emotions, incapable of conveying the depth of her internal struggle, and Daniel, meanwhile, struggled with his own feelings, anger bubbling beneath the surface but tempered by the love that had carried them through years of shared joys and sorrows, and he remembered the countless moments of laughter, the small gestures of care, the quiet support through hardships, and he understood that Clara's feelings, though hurtful to him, were not a denial of their life together but a sign of something he had perhaps overlooked, a need for connection that had been quietly slipping through the cracks of routine, and they both sat in the living room that night, silence stretching between them, heavy yet not suffocating, a fragile space where words were both necessary and insufficient, and Clara watched Daniel, seeing the lines of worry etched into his face, the gentle sadness in his eyes, and she felt an overwhelming mix of love, guilt, and longing, because she knew that the man before her had given everything and still loved her, even as she had allowed her heart to wander emotionally, and as the days passed, their conversations became longer, more honest, fraught with vulnerability, tears shed quietly, questions asked gently, moments of laughter and small reconciliations interspersed with pauses of reflection, and Clara realized that this was the first time she had truly seen Daniel's depth, his capacity to endure pain, and his willingness to confront the truth rather than retreat in anger, and she admired him in a way that made her heart ache, feeling both pride and sorrow, because she understood that her actions, though not physical, had shaken the trust they had built, and the weight of that realization settled heavily in her chest, a reminder of the fragility of love and the care required to maintain it. And in the quiet evenings that followed, Clara and Daniel began to navigate a delicate path, discussing feelings, fears, and desires, sometimes stumbling over words, sometimes finding clarity in shared silences, learning to communicate emotions that had long been hidden, and Clara felt a profound sense of humility, recognizing that emotional wandering, even when innocent in intent, could have deep consequences, and that the heart's desires, if left unchecked, could erode the strongest bonds, and she wondered if she could ever fully repair the trust that had been challenged, if Daniel could truly forgive the emotional intimacy she had allowed to flourish with Leo, and whether their love could be strengthened rather than diminished by the revelations, and in the process, she began to see the importance of transparency, of honesty, of holding nothing back in matters of the heart, because love without openness is fragile, and she began to understand that her emotional journey was not just about herself, but about the shared life they had built together, the vows they had taken, the memories that formed the foundation of their relationship, and she committed quietly to rebuilding that bridge, step by step, acknowledging her feelings but choosing to prioritize the life she and Daniel had created, while still honoring the lessons and awakenings brought about by her connection with Leo, and in doing so, Clara felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow, excitement and fear, because the path ahead required courage, patience, and the willingness to face emotions she had long avoided, and Daniel, observing her resolve, found a spark of hope, realizing that even though trust had been tested, the foundation of their love was not lost, and that with time, communication, and empathy, they could navigate the complex landscape of hearts, desire, and emotional longing without losing the bond they had fought so hard to nurture, and together, they began to rediscover one another, sharing conversations that were deeper, more meaningful, and more heartfelt than they had in years, learning to listen, to empathize, and to connect on a level that transcended routine, and Clara felt the weight of her guilt gradually lift, replaced by a sense of purpose, a desire to strengthen their marriage, to honor the commitment she had made, and to cherish the man who had stood patiently, lovingly, and bravely, even in the face of her emotional wandering, and in those quiet, fragile moments of shared understanding, tears, laughter, and whispered confessions, Clara realized that love could endure, hearts could heal, and the pain of discovery could transform into a deeper, more resilient bond, a lesson she would carry with her forever, as she vowed silently to nurture the emotional intimacy with Daniel, to keep the lessons of longing and self-discovery alive within her own heart without allowing them to compromise the love she truly valued, and as the days turned into weeks, their relationship, though tested, began to grow in subtle, meaningful ways, a testament to the strength of love, forgiveness, and the human capacity to understand, endure, and cherish one another even when faced with the complexities of the heart, and Clara knew that though the path ahead would not be simple, the journey of reconciliation, understanding, and rediscovery of emotional connection was worth every moment, every tear, every difficult conversation, and that the love she and Daniel shared could become even stronger, more aware, and more tender because they had faced the truth together, and she felt a renewed sense of hope, a gentle excitement for the future, and a quiet determination to honor the delicate, powerful bond that was theirs alone, a bond tested by revelation but strengthened by honesty, empathy, and the enduring power of love. In the weeks and months that followed the confrontation and heartfelt conversations, Clara and Daniel began a journey neither of them had expected, one filled with fragile moments, emotional rediscovery, and the slow, careful rebuilding of trust, and each day brought new challenges, because old habits, insecurities, and the weight of guilt did not disappear overnight, yet there was also an undeniable sense of hope, a quiet promise that love, when nurtured with honesty and patience, could grow stronger even after being tested, and Clara found herself reflecting on the emotional closeness she had shared with Leo, recognizing that it had not been about betrayal but about the need to feel seen, appreciated, and alive in ways she had neglected in her own life, and she realized that those feelings could be transformed into lessons about the depth of her heart, the importance of communication, and the value of emotional intimacy in her marriage, and she approached Daniel with a renewed sense of purpose, speaking openly about her desires, fears, and hopes, willing to lay bare her vulnerabilities without hiding any fragment of her experience, and Daniel, in turn, listened with a mixture of sorrow and understanding, remembering the life they had built together, the countless moments of shared joy, and the steady, unwavering love that had sustained them through hardships, and slowly, through daily acts of kindness, attentive listening, shared laughter, and gentle gestures of care, they began to bridge the gap that had formed between them, each conversation a thread weaving their hearts closer, each shared memory reinforcing the foundation of trust, and Clara discovered that intimacy was not merely about passion but about the willingness to understand and be understood, to witness another person's heart without judgment, and to nurture the bond with patience and tenderness, and she noticed subtle changes in Daniel as well, a softening in his expressions, a quiet warmth in his voice, and a renewed curiosity about her thoughts and feelings, all of which reminded her why she had fallen in love with him in the first place, and together, they explored new ways to connect, taking long walks, revisiting favorite spots, sharing meals while discussing dreams and regrets, and slowly, the emotional tension that had once weighed heavily on their relationship began to lift, replaced by a deeper, more profound connection, and Clara found herself appreciating not only Daniel's love but also the patience and empathy he had shown during the difficult days, realizing that true love is measured not by perfection but by the ability to endure, forgive, and grow together, and in these moments of shared reflection, she also recognized her own growth, the awakening of a part of herself that had long been dormant, a heart capable of both longing and loyalty, desire and commitment, and she understood that her fleeting emotional connection with Leo, though intense, had served as a mirror, revealing what she needed to nurture within her marriage and within herself, and as they navigated this delicate balance, Clara and Daniel learned to celebrate the small victories, the quiet reassurances, the smiles and laughter that returned with a gentle rhythm. And each day became an opportunity to strengthen their bond, to rebuild what had been strained, and to honor the love that had withstood the challenge of hidden feelings. And they found that shared vulnerability, when met with patience and understanding, could transform fear and guilt into trust and intimacy, creating a connection that was richer, more resilient, and more emotionally fulfilling than before. And Clara realized that life often presents moments of temptation, longing, or distraction, not to punish or lead astray, but to teach lessons about the heart, the importance of honesty, and the value of nurturing the relationships that truly matter. And she embraced this wisdom with grace, allowing it to guide her in strengthening her marriage while cherishing the emotional lessons of the past. And Daniel, observing her transformation, felt renewed love and admiration for the woman he had married, recognizing her courage, honesty, and willingness to confront her own heart. And together, they began to imagine a future filled with deeper emotional connection, greater understanding, and renewed appreciation for the love they shared. And Clara found joy in small, meaningful moments, the shared morning coffee, the gentle brush of hands while walking together, the laughter at inside jokes, and the quiet evenings spent talking about hopes, dreams, and memories. Each moment reinforcing the depth of their bond and reminding her of the resilience of love. And as time passed, she also discovered a new sense of self-awareness, understanding that emotional awakenings, while sometimes challenging, could serve as catalysts for growth, reflection, and renewed commitment, and that the heart's capacity to experience longing, excitement, and connection could coexist with loyalty, dedication, and enduring love. And Clara found herself more present, more attentive, and more grateful for the life she had chosen, recognizing that while fleeting connections may stir emotions temporarily, true love is nurtured through patience, empathy, and shared experiences. And she carried this understanding into every interaction with Daniel, strengthening the foundation of their marriage and deepening their emotional intimacy. And together, they explored new shared passions, took up hobbies they had once neglected, spent quiet evenings reflecting on the past, and allowed themselves to dream about the future, all while honoring the lessons learned from their emotional trials. And Clara felt a quiet pride in the strength and resilience of their relationship, understanding that love is not measured by perfection or absence of challenge, but by the ability to face difficulties together, communicate openly, and nurture one another's hearts. And Daniel, seeing this transformation in Clara, felt a renewed sense of connection, realizing that even after moments of uncertainty, their love could emerge stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. And as the seasons changed, Clara and Daniel continued to weave their lives together with intention, care, and heartfelt devotion, sharing moments of laughter, reflection, and quiet understanding that reinforced the beauty of their bond. And she found herself thinking often of the lessons learned, of the delicate line between emotional awakening and loyalty, of the importance of honesty and trust, and of the profound joy that comes from rediscovering love in the everyday. And as they sat together one evening, watching the sunset spill golden light across their home, Clara felt a deep sense of contentment, a warm gratitude for the resilience of their hearts, and a quiet excitement for the journey ahead, knowing that the challenges they had faced had brought them closer, made them stronger, and taught them the true meaning of love, forgiveness, and emotional intimacy. And she realized that the heart, even when tested, can heal, grow, and rediscover joy, and that mistakes, though painful, often carry the most important lessons about desire, loyalty, and connection. And she embraced this understanding fully, holding Daniel's hand, feeling the steady warmth and reassurance of his presence, and knowing that together they could navigate any future challenges with courage, empathy, and love. And as the evening shadows lengthened and the quiet hum of their home settled around them, Clara reflected on the journey she had taken, the emotions she had experienced, and the love that had endured, realizing that the heart is capable of immense complexity, that longing and loyalty can coexist, that mistakes can teach, and that emotional intimacy, nurtured with honesty and care, can transform a relationship in ways both profound and lasting. And in that serene, reflective moment, she felt peace, hope, and a renewed commitment to the life and love she and Daniel shared, ready to face the future together, strengthened by experience, guided by empathy, and filled with the quiet, enduring joy of hearts that have been tested, challenged, and ultimately reaffirmed in love.